Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Now before we start proceedings, let's have a quick swig of water. So, today, Showtime have announced their boxing schedule for spring and early summer. 9 shows have been announced, and I will take you through those and give you my brief thoughts on these shows, these fights, etc. So, let's not mess around, let's get right into it. So, on March the 26th, we have a card headlined in Minneapolis, headlined by Tim Tszyu versus Terrell Gausha. Of course, this is Tim Tszyu's US debut. Tim Tszyu, of course, is the son of Costa Tszyu, and at 154, Tim Tszyu is looking like an interesting proposition at world level. He's a pretty hard puncher. Like his dad, he's got a good jab, relies on that distance. He actually has a very similar style to his dad. Not quite as powerful, in my opinion, pound for pound, but he's come on leaps and bounds since his pro debut. I've been following Tim Tszyu ever since he turned pro, and honestly, when he turned pro, he didn't look all that great, but as the years have gone on, he's really improved. I think he's been matched really well, and I think this is another step in the right direction. Terrell Gausha, of course, he's been around a long time now, a former US Olympian, a bit of a gatekeeper at 154, but honestly, I think it's a good fight. It's a good fight for Tim Tszyu right now, and a good test. I would expect Tim Tszyu to win, but it's a good test in my opinion. No real complaints there. And on the undercard, we have the return of Michel Rivera. He's fighting Joseph Adorno. Again, I don't really rate Rivera all that highly, quite frankly. But he's got an interesting style. He kind of looks like Muhammad Ali. That's his gimmick, but I don't think he's all that great, to be honest. But he's in a fight. Joseph Adorno is pretty tough, so we'll see how he looks in that one. And we also have Elvis Rodriguez against Juan Jose Velasco. That should be a pretty good fight, actually. Velasco's a bit of a gatekeeper. Elvis Rodriguez at one point in time was viewed as a top prospect, but of course he suffered the upset loss early in his career, and he's on the rebound, so we'll see how he looks in that fight. All in all, I mean, the card itself it's okay, it's passable, it's serviceable, nothing great, nothing bad, kind of in the middle. We then move to the 9th of April, and again, a card headlined in Las Vegas. The main event is Erickson Lubin versus Sebastian Fundora, and this is for the WBC interim super welterweight title. Now, I have to say, I think this is a really good fight. Erickson Lubin, in my opinion, is a guy who has a lot of talent, a lot of skills, a lot of ability, but in regards to Lubin, I do question his chin. I don't think he's got a great chin, and his mentality ever since he got knocked out by Jermell Charlo a few years ago. He's looked a bit shaky in certain fights since, and yeah, I still wonder whether that is in the back of his mind. Erickson Lubin, on the other hand, is an unbeaten up-and-comer. He's a bit of a freak show in that weight class. I believe he's like 6'6", and that is crazy for 154 pounds. But he's a big dude. Despite his height and reach, he likes to fight coming forwards and really put it on you. He's actually quite good on the inside for a guy of his size. And I see when these two guys match together, I do see Erickson Lubin as the more talented fighter with more skills. He's more technically astute than Erickson Lubin. However, the sheer size of Erickson Lubin in this fight, the sheer size of Sebastian Fundora in this fight, I believe will be enough. I think eventually he'll get to Erickson Lubin and actually knock him out. I don't trust Erickson Lubin's chin. I don't think he can stay away from Lubin for 12 rounds, and I think eventually he gets knocked out. But I do see it as a very competitive fight and a really good main event. And on the undercard, another good fight at 154, Tony Harrison versus Sergio Garcia. A bit of a crossroads fight, I guess you would say. Tony Harrison, at this point in his career, he needs to win. If he loses against Sergio Garcia, He's pretty much done at the elite level. And Sergio Garcia wants to get back to winning ways after losing a controversial decision to Sebastian Fundora. Tony Harrison, to me, has always been a super talented guy, a bit of a boxer puncher. He's got a lovely jab, beautiful jab, Tony Harrison. Nice movement, nice straight punches. Tony Harrison is a really skilled fighter. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But the problem with Tony Harrison again is his stamina and his chin isn't the best. Sergio Garcia is a good boxer in his own right. High output, high activity. He can move. He can fight on the inside. He can do a bit of everything. Sergio Garcia. He's a really well-rounded fighter, and quite frankly, I felt that Sergio Garcia beat Sebastian Fundora. So, Sergio Garcia is a good fighter. Put these two guys together. I mean, to me, it depends on what Tony Harrison we get. If it's Tony Harrison from his last fight against Bryant Perella, then Sergio Garcia beats Tony Harrison. But if it's Tony Harrison at his best, we've got a really good boxing match right here because both guys can box their socks off. But if you're asking me who's going to win this fight, I think Sergio Garcia beats Tony Harrison at this stage. But once again, it's a really good fight. And also on the undercard, we have prospect Kevin Salgado. He is fighting Bryant Perella. I've not seen too much from Salgado, but I have seen Perella fight before, coming off a draw against Tony Harrison. So that's a good test for an up-and-comer in Kevin Salgado. So April the 9th, in my opinion, is a really solid card. Really solid card. Can't complain. On April the 16th, we have a pay-per-view card at Texas AT&T Stadium, headlined by Errol Spence Jr. versus Yordenis Ugas. Of course, this is a unification fight. Errol Spence is the IBF and WBC champion. Yordenis Ugas is the WBA champion. Two of the best welterweights in the world going at it. Two southpaws. Contrasting styles, though. I would say Yordenis Ugas is more of a... I'd say he's kind of like a boxer puncher / counter puncher. Likes to rely on his long range boxing, but he can mix it up. He can work the body when he has to. Errol Spence is more aggressive. Nice tight guard. Comes forwards behind that lovely jab. Great body puncher. Good on the inside. Good at mid range. Put these two guys together. It's going to be very interesting. And what makes this fight even more interesting is where is Errol Spence right now? Where is he at? Of course, recently he's been very inactive. He didn't fight in 2021. Last fight was November or December 2020 against Danny Garcia. Before then, he had that car crash. Since then, he's had a retina injury. So where is Errol Spence right now? Who knows? But I can tell you this. We're going to find out exactly where he is during this fight. Because if Errol Spence isn't what he was, and he's half cooked, then Yordenis Ugas can expose that. So Errol Spence will need to be at his best or near his best to win this fight. Having said that, I still would pick Errol Spence. I'm expecting a big performance from him. I'm expecting him to remind people in regards to how good he is. So that's a great fight. Lovely fight. I love it. But I've got Errol Spence in that one. Great main event. And on the undercard, we have Radzab Butayev against Aminantas Stanionis. This is for the WBA regular welterweight title. Great fight. Butayev coming off a great win over Jamal James, where he stopped Jamal James. Great body punch to Butayev. High output, very aggressive, power in both hands. Stanionis also an aggressive fighter, but he's more circumspect in his approach, more economical with his work. Really likes to box behind that hard jab and come over the top with his overhand right. He's not as relentless in regards to punch output as Butayev. Again, doesn't really waste much. Stanionis, he tries to look for the openings as he's coming forwards, and he can counter quite effectively. But I think this fight's going to be a war. But I believe that Radzab Butayev will outlast Stanionis in this fight. I'm not sure whether he wins by stoppage or not, but I just think Butayev's output will be too much for Stanionis. Great co-main event though. That's a great co-main event for a pay-per-view. And we also have the return of Brandon Lee, who is a prospect at Brandon Lee's a prospect at light welterweight, and he is fighting Zachary Ochoa. Ochoa was a prospect at one stage, never really developed into anything special, but I would say this is Brandon Lee's best opponent to date. Brandon Lee, I'm not really sure what to make of, to be honest. He's a big puncher, he does have quick hands, he looks good on paper, he looks good against no marks, but how good is he? Time will tell, but it's a decent test for him. So, April 16th so far is shaping up to be a good card. Great main event, great co-main event. I'm not complaining there. Now, on May the 14th, I believe this is on regular Showtime. Great card at Los Angeles. Brian Castano versus Jamel Charlo. This is for the undisputed crown at super welterweight. Of course, this is a rematch. They fought last year. Most people felt that Brian Castano won that first fight, including myself. But, you know, that first fight was a brilliant fight, really enjoyable. Both guys had their moments. There was a time when Castano was hurt. There were other times when Castano was completely outworking Charlo on the inside. First time around, great fight. Rematch, what's not to like? What's not to like? And quite frankly, I see it as a 50-50. I'm not making my pick right now. I'll have to wait till nearer the time to really think about it. But that is a great fight. And on the undercard, we have the return of hot prospect Jaron Ennis at welterweight. He is fighting Custio Clayton in an IBF welterweight eliminator. Good fight for Jaron Ennis at this stage. I would say that Custio Clayton is the best opponent that he's ever fought. I felt Custio Clayton was very unlucky in getting a draw against Sergei Lipinets. I felt he beat Lipinets, and he went into that fight on very short notice. So, you know, Clayton, how good is he? It's hard to say, but I would certainly say he's Ennis's best opponent to date. And on top of that, it's a welterweight title eliminator for the IBF, which Errol Spence holds. So, you know, Jaron Ennis is getting close now. He's getting very close. And yeah, no complaints from me here. No complaints from me. Really good card on May the 14th in Los Angeles. May the 21st at Phoenix. So yeah, in Phoenix. May 21st in Phoenix. David Benavidez versus David Lemieux. I believe this fight is some sort of eliminator with the WBC. I mean, Benavidez is always good fun to watch, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting for him to step up. David Lemieux was a guilty pleasure of mine in his prime. Big puncher. Very limited, but a big puncher. But these days, Lemieux has seen better days, you know? He's seen better days, way past his best. He's not really a super middleweight, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Lemieux can always punch, so there's that to look forward to. There's that to, you know, keep you intrigued by. But ultimately, Benavidez should be dealing with Lemieux at this stage of Lemieux's career. Could be fun, though. It could be fun. And on the undercard, we have Yolvis Gomez against Jorge Cota. Jorge Cota, journeyman or gatekeeper at super welterweight. Yolvis Gomez, one of the best prospects at super welterweight. Not many people are talking about him, but he's a big puncher. He's Cuban, but doesn't have that traditional Cuban style. He's quite aggressive, and I'm quite high on Yolvis Gomez. And this is a pretty good fight for this stage of his career. So again, no complaints there. But the card overall, it's not particularly special, let's be real. May the 28th, Showtime pay-per-view, a card headlined by Gervonta Tank Davis against Rolando Romero. I mean, listen, I'm not really expecting much from Tank Davis these days, given how his career's progressed. I'll take this fight for what it is. I'll enjoy the build-up. Rolly Romero talks a lot of trash. He's a bit of a goofball. So the build-up is going to be fun. But in regards to Rolly Romero being a top lightweight or a top contender, he's not. He's just not. He's a big, strong kid. He can punch a bit, but skill set wise, he leaves a lot to be desired. So the fact this is on pay-per-view, I feel for you guys in the United States. It's a poor pay-per-view. What more can I say? Hopefully the undercard is good, but it's a really poor pay-per-view in my opinion. So yeah, I'm going to give that the thumbs down. June the 4th, Awesome fight. Awesome fight. Wow, awesome fight. Stephen Fulton Jr. versus Danny Roman. Of course, Stephen Fulton holds the WBC and WBO titles at Super Bantamweight. Danny Roman is a former unified champion and mandatory for Stephen Fulton's titles. Great fight at Super Bantamweight. Stephen Fulton, to me, he's doing all of the right things. I actually felt Fulton lost his last fight. I felt he was a bit lucky with that decision. But regardless of that, I think he's a very good fighter. Very good Philly fighter. And I like what he's doing in his career. He's fighting tough competition on the come up. He never had it easy. He fought several unbeaten prospects. And, you know, he beat Angelo Leo for that world title, another good prospect. And he fought and beat Brandon Figueroa in his last fight. Well, at least he got the decision. That was a unification fight. So Stephen Fulton is doing all the right things right now. He's not having these bullshit interim fights. He's not having tune-up fights. He's fighting top competition. So, big up to Stephen Fulton Jr. Great fight right there. Daniel Roman, he was a good champion. He's a very good contender. Really versatile fighter. Can box a bit. Can fight on the inside. Not a big puncher, but he's a very good fighter. Excellent fight. Not complaining at all. And we also have the return of David Morrell, who I really like. I think he's a very good prospect. He is fighting Calvin Henderson, for the WBA regular super middleweight title. Not a great fight, to be honest, but, you know, David Morrell, he is only 6-0. I know he's somewhat being fast-tracked, but I don't really hold this one against him. The only thing is, I'd like to see him be more active. That's the only thing. But the main event more than makes up for it. Great main event. June the 18th. Extremely disappointing. This is in Houston, Texas. Jamal Charlo defending his WBC middleweight title against Maciek Selecki. Selecki's a decent fighter. He's been around, you know, he fought Andrade for a title before, got soundly outpointed. Had that great fight with Gabriel Rosado where he was schooling Rosado and then got dropped a couple of times at the end of that fight. He still won that fight by decision. I mean, Selecki is okay, but at this stage of Jamal Charlo's career, this is just underwhelming, to say the least. And, you know, to Charlo's defense in some regard, I mean, he tried to make that Munguia fight, and from what I've seen online, it seemed like Munguia and Golden Boy were the ones being the problem there. They were the ones being the problem, yeah. But regardless of that situation, Charlo's done nothing for years. And this is just another meh fight. I mean, Selecki's not awful, but he's not exactly a top 5 middleweight. So, it's one of those, man. It's one of those. I'm not particularly looking forward to it. We shall see what happens. And on July the 9th, we have Mark Magsayo defending his WBC featherweight title against mandatory challenger Ray Vargas. I believe Ray Vargas was the super bantamweight champion with the WBC for a little while. That's a good fight. Magsayo's coming off a win over Gary Russell Jr., of course. And yeah, right away he's defending against a good fighter. His mandatory in Ray Vargas, a former champion. Vargas is a tall, rangy boxer, a bit awkward in his approach. Not got the greatest style in the world, but he's a good fighter. And Mark Magsayo is a come-forward puncher, loves to work that body. I think put those two guys together, this is going to be an intriguing style clash, to be honest. So yeah, I like this fight. No problems here whatsoever. Solid main event, and we shall see how the undercard develops. So yeah, that is the PBC Showtime schedule for spring and early summer. There's a couple of disappointments, you know, like Jamal Charlo, for example, and even Gervonta Tank Davis. But as a whole, I think this schedule is pretty damn solid. There's some fights there I'm really looking forward to. And of course, there's going to be more news in regards to undercards as the weeks progress. So potentially, we could still get some more good fights added to this schedule. Pardon me. So yeah, I mean, I like this schedule overall. Like I say, couple of disappointments, But, you know, that is par of a course at the end of the day. What do you guys think, though? What are the fights that you're looking forward to most? Me personally, the fights I'm looking forward to most are Stephen Fulton versus Daniel Roman. Awesome fight. Of course, Brian Castano versus Jamel Charlo. Excellent fight. Spence Ugas Butayev versus Stanionis. Lubin versus Fundora. Harrison Garcia. I mean, there's a lot of fights here that I'm really looking forward to. So, listen, all in all, it's a pretty solid schedule by the PBC. Can always be better, but it's certainly not terrible. And I'd say it's a bit above average, to be honest. It's a pretty good schedule. But anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy.